I drew Guts' Berserker armor a lot, and I studied the proportions and armor structure to simplify the drawing process of the armor. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to draw Guts' armor, or so-called Berserker armor, from the manga Berserk. I broke down the drawing process of the armor into simple steps using simple shapes and guidelines. I'll teach you how to draw the upper and lower body armor, and then the helmet, step by step. And I'll also give you some tips on drawing the armor I've learned on the way. The armor may look very complex, but don't worry, I've got you covered on this one. Just make sure you keep the subscribe button on. Let's go. We're going to draw Guts' body first, then the armor on top. Because Guts' body will be the foundation of the armor, we're going to need it to get the armor proportion correct. Of course, we don't need to draw Guts' body in detail, but in simple shapes, just to get the proportions right. Guts has the average 8 head proportion body, but with a thick neck and wide shoulders. Draw the head in a sphere and trapezoid, the neck in a cylinder half a head long under the head, the rib cage in an egg shape 1.5 heads long under the neck, the shoulders in spheres half a neck wide on the top sides of the rib cage, a shoulder's width apart, the upper arms in cylinders, the length of the rib cage under the shoulders, and the elbows in spheres the size of the shoulders, the lower arms the length of the rib cage, and the wrists in spheres the size of the elbows. The pelvis in a football shape, half a rib cage long that ends at the bottom of the lower arms. Connect the rib cage and the pelvis with a slightly dented hourglass shape. Draw the hands simply in boxes and triangles, 2/3 of a head long. Draw the upper legs in cylinders, the width of the neck, under the pelvis, a slight width apart, and the knees in spheres, the size of the shoulders. The length of the upper legs and knees is equal to the length of the lower legs and feet, each 2 heads long. Draw the lower legs in cylinders, the width of the knees. The length of the legs is equal to the length of the upper body and head, each 4 heads long. Draw the ankles in spheres, the size of the knees, and the feet simply in trapezoids and arches, half a head long. Now that we have Guts' body as a foundation, let's start drawing the armor, starting with the upper body armor. First, draw a dot in the center of the rib cage. Then, draw a rectangle 2 shoulders long and a shoulder wide. Overlap 1/3 of the shoulder on both sides. Mark the 1/3 point of the top line, the 3/5 point on the outside line, the 2 bottom corners, the point where the rectangle intersects the top of the shoulder, and the center of these 2 points in dots. Connect these dots curve inwards like so. Do this on both sides, and this will be the shoulder armor. Draw lines from the outside center points of the shoulder armor to the center of the rib cage. These lines should intersect the 3rd highest inside points of the shoulder armor. Draw lines slightly inwards and outwards of the bottom corners of the neck to the center, creating a triangular shape with 2 thin triangles at the sides. Draw lines slightly higher towards the neck from the highest points of the shoulder armor, and lines slightly lower towards the neck from the 2nd highest points of the shoulder armor. Mark a line at the triangular shape between the 3rd highest inside points of the shoulder armor. And from that line, draw small C-shapes outwards inside the thin triangles, and connect the bottom of the C-shapes to the center. Mark the center point of the small C-shapes, and from here, draw lines up to the slightly inwards bottom corners of the neck, and vertical lines upwards to the chin. The lower part of the helmet is connected to the upper armor, so let's draw this part now. Divide the sphere of the head into 4 equal parts. Mark the points where the 3rd line continues to the ends of the sphere, and draw lines downwards to the middle in the center of the bottom of the sphere and chin. Draw lines horizontally mirroring the angle upwards as it went down to the ends of the sphere, and come back down creating two thin triangles. From where the two triangles meet, draw a line down to the center, and draw two inwards curves, starting and ending at the points slightly inwards of the neck. From here, draw horizontal lines out to the points slightly outwards of the neck, and lines to the top of the small C shapes. From these edges, come down vertically to where the rib cage intersects, approximately at the top of the elbows. From here, draw lines to the center, and lines curving inwards to the bottom corners of the shoulder armor. These curves curve more at the rib cage and less at the shoulder armor. Mark 3 equal points of these 4 lines connecting to the shoulder armor on both sides by marking the center once and then 2 more times. Make sure to keep these points symmetrical on both sides. Connect these points in curves, curving in the same direction as the curves on the shoulder armor, creating armor columns. From the bottom points of the second armor columns, draw curves to the points continuing to the sides of the body. From here, draw vertical lines down to the pelvis and a horizontal line above the pelvis, creating a rectangle. Divide the rectangle into 3 equal rows and draw vertical lines from where the rib cage intersects. Curve these lines and draw 2 horizontal lines outwards from the bottom points of the 3rd and 4th armor columns on both sides. Draw arches on the horizontal lines and slanted curves starting slightly inwards from the top points and slanting and curving out to the bottom points on the vertical lines. Do this also on the 4 lines connecting to the shoulder armor. The line on the very bottom will curve upwards and the rest will curve downwards. Do this on both sides. Connect the shoulder armor points in 2 curves curving downwards and the very bottom curve curving upwards on both sides. For the upper arm armor, draw rectangles under the shoulder armor with lines continuing from the ends of the shoulder armor and the bottom point of the first armor column to the top of the elbow. Divide the rectangle into 4 equal rows and 2 equal columns. Draw slanted curves for the outside vertical lines, arches for the horizontal lines, and slanted curves curving inwards for the center vertical lines. For the pelvis armor, draw slight curves from these points to the bottom of the pelvis, slightly away from the center, and short curves downwards meeting at the center. Draw another inwards offset slight curve and a short curve downwards meeting at the center on both sides. Draw a line equally dividing the length of the pelvis armor, and a line on the upper half so the top part is a little longer, and a line on the bottom half so the bottom part is a little longer. Draw arches on the horizontal lines and slanted curves on the outside lines. For the elbow armor, draw a rectangle using lines continuing from the upper arm armor to the bottom of the elbow, and from the outside of the arms, draw lines to the center of the sides of the rectangle, creating a diamond shape. Draw a line in the center, a thin rectangle in the inside of the arm, and the biceps in a slight curve. Do this on both sides. For the lower arm armor, mark the center of these 2 points, and the inside bottom corner of the rectangle of the elbow armor, and connect the points. Draw lines to the ends of the wrist. Connect the center points of the top and bottom, and mark 3 equal points of the outside, middle, and inside lines. Starting from the top, draw arches curving downwards and a point facing up at the bottom. For the sides, draw slanted curves, slanting and curving in to the bottom points, and draw 2 lines in the center. Do this on both sides. For the hand armor, draw a rectangle 2 times as long and 1 time as wide as the wrist, and a thin rectangle below for the knuckles. Draw a triangle at the inside side of the rectangle, and a line down the rectangle close to the triangle. Draw 4 lines going downwards from the middle to the outside and inside sides of the rectangle, and draw a line and point intersect in the triangle. Draw the thumb in 2 chunks and the rest of the fingers in 3. Only a few of the rest of the fingers will be visible in this angle, so just draw 2. Divide the first 2 chunks of all the fingers in 2. Draw circles for the knuckles and slanted lines at the outside side. Do this on both sides. Now let's draw a waist belt and a shoulder strap for the sheath, and a few bolts. Draw the waist belt on the armor row right above the pelvis, sticking out at the side and tucking in underneath at the front. Draw the shoulder strap over the shoulder following the triangular shaped armor piece and attach it to the waist belt with a buckle. Erase the inside of the belts and redraw. Draw the buckles and holes, and a cape in between the 2 inwards curves at the neck area, covering 2 armor columns on both sides. Draw 2 wrinkles at the top of both sides. Erase the inside of the cape and redraw. Draw bolts and dots on the ends of the shoulder strap, and 2 small belts and buckles at the top row of the pelvis armor. For the armor bolts, draw 1 bolt beside each shoulder armor, and 2 on each side of the triangular shaped armor piece. I'll draw the rest of the bolts after drawing the lower body armor. This will be a wrap for the upper body armor. For the lower body armor, start by drawing a line under the 3rd row of the pelvis armor. Draw a slight width out of the pelvis about the width of this armor piece, and a line from the top of the pelvis creating a triangle. Do this on both sides. Continue these lines a slight width out, and also draw lines a slight width at the inside of the legs at the bottom of the pelvis. Draw a line connecting the top of the pelvis to the bottom of the pelvis, and the edge of the triangle to the bottom point. Do this on both sides. Divide the outside lines of the triangles and the lines inside of the legs in 3, and connect the divided points. For the knee armor, draw a rectangle 2 shoulders wide and 1 shoulder long at the center of the knees, and 2 more rectangles above and below. Do this on both sides. Draw center lines through these rectangles, and continue the center lines a slight length upwards and downwards. Draw slanted lines from the ends of the rectangles to the continued lines above and below. Draw lines parallel to these slanted lines from the corners of the rectangles at the center, and 2 more sets of parallel lines in between the slanted lines above and below the knee. Do this on both sides. For the upper leg armor, draw S-curves curving outwards and inwards from the edges of the triangles at the pelvis area to the inside corners of the knee armor, and S-curves curving a little less from the ends of the continued lines to the center points of the knee armor. At the same starting points, draw S-curves curving even less to the outside corners of the knee armor. Draw slight curves curving outwards at the center of the shape divided in 3, and continue that curve into a slight S-curve to the inside corner of the knee armor. Do this on both sides, and draw the inside of the upper legs in slight curves. For the lower leg armor, from the bottom of the knee armor, mark the ends of the 3rd lines and the center of the line between the 1st and 2nd lines, and curve down to the middle and back up. Do this on both sides. Draw curves getting slimmer to the ankles. Continue the center line to the ankles and draw a slight point facing down at the bottom. Mark 3 equal points of the middle, outside, and inside lines of the lower leg armor and connect them. Divide the center of the knee armor in 6 parts by drawing lines in X's from the corners. Draw arches curving downwards at the shapes divided in 3. Continue these arches by marking 3 equal points of the 3 lines that end at the inside upper corners of the knee armor, and draw arches curving downwards. Draw slanted curves, slanting and curving in to the bottom points at the center and outside of the shapes divided in 3. Draw arches curving downwards at the top of the knee armor, and arches curving upwards at the bottom. Draw slanted lines slanting inwards to the bottom points at the top and lines slanting to the top points at the bottom. Do this on both sides. Draw curves curving outwards for the center line of the knee and curves curving towards the center for the lines in X's. Draw the sides of the knees slant, curve, and slant. Do this on both sides. Erase the inside of the lower legs and draw the lines curve and point slightly at the center. For the sides, draw slanted curves, slanting and curving in to the bottom points, and draw 2 lines in the center. For the foot armor, draw slightly dented hourglass shapes with points facing down at the top. Mark 3 equal points at the sides and draw 2 lines in the center. From the top, draw 2 points facing down and 1 point facing down less on both sides. Draw a slight curve going down at the center and up at the toes, and draw 2 lines in the center. Draw curves curving slightly outwards and wider on the sides, and 2 short lines in the center. Connect the end points in slight curves going down at the center and up. Draw the lines slightly curved down, and for the sides, draw slanted lines, slanting inwards to the bottom points. For the bolts, draw 4 on both sides of the top row of the upper body armor, 4 on the upper and lower arm armor, and 4 on the sides of the pelvis armor. The bolts on the lower body armor are on the inside sides, so draw them thinner. From the top, 3 and 4 on the upper leg armor, 4 and 4 on the knee armor, and 4 on the lower leg armor, of course on both sides. For the helmet, draw the center line for the sphere of the head. Draw lines from the ends of the first horizontal line to the center line at the 2/3 point between the lines. Draw the outside of the top arc in 4 equal lines and draw lines meet at the center, creating 4 triangles. Draw 4 lines connecting the center points of these lines and 4 more at the center points of the inside lines. Draw vertical lines at the sides from the first horizontal line to the second, and points facing outwards similar in size to the points below, but pointing a little less, and continue lines to the bottom of the sphere, creating 2 thin triangles. Mark the half point of the vertical lines at the sides, and draw lines slanting to the center of the 3rd horizontal line up to the 2nd horizontal line, and connect the ends with the center points. Continue these lines to the thin triangles and draw lines slanting out. Draw the same slanting lines also on the thin triangles below. Mark the center points of the smaller thin triangles with parallel slanting lines on both the top and bottom thin triangles, creating 3 columns and 2 rows. Draw curves curving inwards on the outside of the rows. Draw 4 teeth on the front 2 columns of the top row, and 4 teeth in 3 slanted lines on the back column and front 2 columns of the bottom row. Draw the front 2 teeth of the bottom row in triangles. Draw the ears in pointed curves that curve inwards, then outwards. For the eyes, draw triangles here and trapezoids here on these lines. Draw triangles connecting these 2 shapes. Then draw 2 curves towards the center and 2 downwards. Offset these curves. Draw lines connecting the starting points of the offset curves. Again, draw 2 curves towards the center and 2 downwards. And again, offset the curves. Erase the unnecessary guidelines. Draw the cape flow from the shoulders to the lower legs in small random curves. Draw the handle of the sword about 1/4 of the length of the blade, and a metal piece in the shape of a hexagon with lines going through at the end of the handle. Draw bandages at the handle with slanted lines, and cloth tied to the end of the handle. Guts' sword is similar length to Guts' height, so draw the blade down to the ankles. Draw the blade wide and offset inwards the silhouette of the blade. Now shade the darker areas, under the armor pieces and under the light source, which will be at the top left. Shade with lines adjacent to the lines of the armor shape or folding of cloth. After shading, sharpen your pencil and draw the lines that got blurry through the shading process. Lastly, draw a matching background, and we are done. Now I'll give you 2 tips on drawing Guts' Berserker armor more efficiently and skillfully, for the real ones out there who came this far into the video and kept the subscribe button on. I owe you on this. Tip number 1. When drawing the guidelines, draw lightly. I used guidelines for drawing the complex and scaly armor, but when drawing the guidelines, remember to draw as light as possible, so you can later erase the guidelines in ease. This will also prevent you from getting a mushy and dirty drawing because of all the guidelines. Tip number 2 is a tip on shading. Here's how to shade the armor. There is thickness in the edges of the armor, so shade leaving a little white space at the edges of the armor, and then start shading. And because the armor curves in, the shading tone will become much darker right away. So the shading tones will be like so: white, dark, middle tone, white, middle tone, dark, white. The sides are the darkest due to the curved armor, but there's a little white at the very edges, and as it goes to the center, the armor gets lighter. This is the basic pattern of shading Berserker armor, and is also the reason why I drew the center lines of the armor in some areas in 2 lines, giving thickness to the edges. Guts' journey is filled with dark fantasy elements and epic battles. The journey might be painful, but I hope you all win in the battles and struggles and continue the journey on drawing to get better. I hope for the best and for you all to light up like a bonfire of dreams. I guess that's enough Berserk for today. Anyways guys, let's get better together. Take it easy and God bless.